makes a great
Great
character? Makes the reader want to go, ooh!
Ooh, I want to know a bit more about this guy.
Well, it makes the reader want to connect with the character. And if you get the characters wrong, then you might as well scrap the whole story. What are the rules that you can follow to guarantee that you will create the most interesting character that you can possibly create? But if you love fantasy, then make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. The first rule to write an engaging character is to make them interesting. But how do you do that? How do you make a character interesting? Well, I'm glad you asked. In order to write an interesting character, you need them to have flaws. These flaws should be in one of two areas. These two areas are skills and likability. Every single character has a certain amount of likability and a certain amount of skills. An interesting character is one who has either very high likability and low skills, or very high skills and low likability. I'll give you an example of characters, because examples are what make the world go round. Geralt of Rivia, Batman, and Roland from the Dark Tower are all very similar characters. They are all exceptional fighters, and that makes their skill level incredibly high. But they are not very likable. They are all very dark, grim, introverted characters, even though they're main characters. And that's okay. And usually people have flaws in either their likability or their skills. It's rare that you find a person who has a high amount of both. Some characters are very likable but are unskilled. Harry Potter, Bilbo Baggins, Luke Skywalker. These three characters all start off the story with very low amount of skill but high likability. They're people that you would have conversations with, invite round to dinner. They're the kind of people that you would share a Malteser with if you happen to have a packet of Maltesers in your hand. Almost every story starts with a main character who's very unskilled, so they're very naive. Harry doesn't know any magic, Luke doesn't even know about the Force, and Bilbo has never travelled beyond the Shire borders. But through the story they undergo a process of transformation where they learn all of these skills and they become beasts. And so at the end of the story, they usually have a high skill level and a high likability level. But that's okay, because at the end of the story, it's the end of the story. If you didn't realise, the villain is dead, and it's okay if at that point the characters are no longer interesting because they're very skilled and they're very likable. This leads me to point number 2, which is equally essential if you want to create riveting characters. Characters that just they pang at you from the book. They reach out and grab at your heart and they pull it out because they are so full of emotional juice. Here is the tip. It's to make the characters undergo some kind of change. There are unlimited ways that you can do this, but in most stories the characters undergo some kind of transformational change. For example, the three main characters that I mentioned, Bilbo, Harry and Luke, all undergo transformational change where at the end of the story they're completely different versions of themselves compared to what they were at the start. This is a transformation character arc, but you can also have a growth character arc, which is not quite as extreme because the characters don't go through complete change, but they change in some area in a positive way. For example, Kelsier from Mistborn, he has this deep-rooted hatred for a group of people called noblemen. He was abused in his past, and because of that he has a deep-rooted hatred for them, and he wants to kill as many of them as possible. But then he rises above his carnal desire to kill them and actually forgives them and realizes that not every nobleman is evil and corrupt. He's undergone a process of positive change, but it's not really transformational. In transformation and growth arcs, the characters often begin by believing some kind of lie. For example, in Luke Skywalker's case, his lie was that he believed that he was going to spend his whole life working as a farmer and his whole life was going to be boring and dull and he was never going to do anything special. And the same for Harry Potter. He believed that he was going to spend his whole life living with the Dursleys, being bullied by Dudley, and he was never going to do anything special or meaningful in his life. But then through the story, those lies are replaced by truths as the character begins on all of these incredible adventures.
You're a wizard, Harry.
or you can have a full character arc, which is where the character undergoes more negative change. This is most common in villains like Voldemort, Joker, and Darth Vader. They've been corrupted by their past. In negative character arcs, they usually begin by believing some form of truth, but that truth is littered with a few lies, and throughout the story they begin believing those lies more, and they are reinforced perhaps by their circumstances. Their worldview becomes more and more corrupted, and they undergo negative change. The Joker was probably once a pleasant enough guy that you would have a conversation with, kind of guy that you would give a Malteser to, but that version of him has been destroyed by years of abuse and hardship, leaving only the Joker. So that's basically it. 2 rules that will make your characters pop. They must either be likable or have a high skill level, but not both and not neither. So in other words, they must have some flaws, but not too many and not too few. That is what makes characters interesting. And secondly, they must undergo some form of change, which could either be positive or negative. So if this video was helpful in any way, then give it a like. See you. Sooner than you think.